Hi, guys, and thank you for tuning in for this industry conversation with Sky Dietrich. It was honestly so eye opening to find another musician and creator in XR, and it's always fun to have those types of conversations. Sky has so much experience in different industries that getting her takeaways and somehow like bringing all of this up together was honestly such a delight. So I can't wait for you to hear this. Thank you for joining.
You.
Like I
Yeah,
saw
I,
this and I'm
I
like, you routed audio in unit. What the hell? You're an insane. Who would do that? Why would you do that?
oh, it's
Good for you.
terribly fun. Yes, this is like nerd fantasy, you know?
I love that. All right, we're
Uh,
about 4 minutes in. Let's see. Sap already started the recording a while back. So, yeah, I think we can start and people are going to join us as we go.
cool.
Welcome, everyone, for our industry talk. I believe this is our fourth or fifth industry talk in the sonic sphere. We're having another one in the upcoming week about immersive sound, but this week we're meeting with Dietrich. Correct me if I said your last name wrong.
Oh, you said it right.
Okay. Sky is an awesome individual who is self-taught programmer, but a very professional musician and have a very interesting story. It really much reminded me of my story in a way, but that's not why I think it's awesome. She really took it to the next level. So I'm really glad to have you, Sky. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty great. It's always a great day when I get to talk about the things that I love, the things that I think about in my sleep, and then I actually get to say them out loud. This is amazing.
This is so great to see people working out of passion, to be honest. There are not enough of those people. Sky, tell us how you started.
Yeah, I do come from like a musical family. Like my father was like a music minister and kind of handled the sound in the church when I was young. So I've kind of
Cool.
always been around it. Lots of family members playing instruments or singing, wheeling in equipment or not. But even outside of church, my dad had a band, and so I'd always try to stay up late, and they'd try to make me go to bed because the band was rocking in the basement or something.
What
But
type of music was it?
oh, yeah, we're talking like Earth, Wind, and Fire, and Marvin Gaye. This is the type of songs my dad was singing.
Mm.
They were doing like mostly cover tunes and stuff. So yeah, like disco funk, R&B at that time. Um, and then otherwise like gospel stuff.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
But I actually didn't go that route myself, and I grew up later, and I ended up being in like garage rock bands, like when I moved to California. But it was during that time of just playing around with being a singer-songwriter who loved many different genres and could never stay like married to one. Um, I I started to work with like producers, like because I was trying to create these sounds or these productions that I imagined in my head. The very first producer I ever worked with was my cousin who had a cute Casio keyboard, and we used to make little jams or whatever. But then, and as I grew
The
up,
one with all the
um,
sounds.
yeah, yeah, it had a lot of sounds, and you could actually change some of the sequences. It was kind of funny now when I think back to it. Um, but eventually, I started to want to develop my own imagination, and I always had to like do that awkward thing where you hum it out loud, or you try to beatbox it to somebody so that they
Right.
do it for you. And, yeah, at some point, I just realized that, I needed to learn how to do that to, at the very least, sketch it out for myself. But even in the mixing room, I realized that I wanted to understand EQing. I wanted to know how to make that sound be how I imagined it. And so, yeah, I ended up in, around 2003, I studied, audio engineering in New York City at the Institute of Audio Research. um, this had been recommended to me by my mentor at the time, at a music studio, who I didn't tell you this part before. I used to make, like, party flyers, like, in Microsoft Word back in the day, like, and then, segment them and then cut them out, and, the studio owner saw that I was making flyers like this, neighborhood studio, and he's like, "Hey, can you make some flyers for the studio? And then I'll give you a free session." And I was like, "Yeah." And that was
Seizing
cool, and so I
opportunities everywhere. Good.
yeah, so I did that, and then he was like, "Great, now can you make me some business cards?" I was like, "Sure thing." And then, after the relationship grew and I actually, started helping him out in the studio with different things, and he didn't understand how I learned so fast, but I was just looking over his shoulder. And so he suggested to me, "I think you have a knack for this. I think you should study, like, actually study to do this." I was like, "Okay." And
Did
then
you know what you were doing back then? Because I remember
no, I was
looking at a
just
studio in the beginning and it just looks like a giant spaceship and all the buttons look the same. So I was completely lost.
I can't say that I immediately knew, but I think, just I'm a type of person, like, if I see somebody do it, I can mimic it. And then I may ask a question, or I may already figure out what that button did that they just pushed. And so then later, then I can do it,
Yeah,
or
some of
try
them
it
are
at least.
more obvious than others. That's true.
Right. So, if I didn't know, I would ask. But there was a couple of instances where he noticed that I just did something and he didn't even show me and I did it. And he asked me how did I know how to do that? And I said, "Oh, well, I saw you do it." And he was like, "Okay, you need to go deeper." And so I did. And yeah, I enjoyed it, and from there, after I graduated, I ended up, doing small things, cafes, bars, but also the studio ended up hiring me as a freelance engineer. So I was doing it was like hip hop recordings, R&B. The old school hip hop group Naughty by Nature was one of the notable groups that used to play out of that. We were in New Jersey, in East Orange, and
For those who are not familiar, can you just explain a little bit what does that mean to work in a studio? Like what actually did you do in the studio?
yeah, so in this particular studio, mostly we were tracking vocals or like electric instruments like electric bass or electric guitar, a lot of singers. And so there would be people who maybe had their own home production studio, and then they would bring in their multi tracks and say, okay, now we want to do vocals in a big studio with stronger microphones, or tube amps, or tube compressors, or and yeah, stuff like this. And so they would come to us, and I did it was sort of a combination of just being an engineer, but also sort of helping co-produce vocals, and helping people understand how to enhance like their creative vision with like how to do overdubs and layering vocals and things like that, that maybe a lot of people who don't have this knowledge would never think that they had to do in order to be releasable in the market. So we would
So
do that, and
just
and
for
sometimes
everyone, what
then
is
mix. Yeah.
overdub? Can you explain
Oh,
overdub?
sure, sure. So like a lot of times when we're hearing, especially pop music on the radio, we hear that main lead vocal that they're singing the melody, but sometimes there's quieter vocal layers mixed in under that. So, especially in choruses, especially, they might have recorded that chorus, 3 to 5 times, or more, and it's all manipulated in a different way or muted here or there to provide dynamics and fatness and dimension to the sound that we're hearing in the end.
So basically recording different layers of vocals and combining them together to get the depth of the recording.
Yeah,
That's really
in
cool.
a nutshell. Yeah. So that was a lot of fun, and then occasionally, people be like, "Okay, now we've recorded it. We need somebody to mix all the make it pretty." And
Polish
so
it, we say.
polish it, polish it. Yeah. So yeah, I
So
mean that was the beginning stages for my professional audio journey.
okay, and so Then you got into programming eventually?
Yeah, yeah, eventually through having danced between being a musician and being a technician, and also having done a bit of audio on set for film and TV and things like this, I learned what I liked and what I didn't like in the professional landscape. And ultimately, I decided that I'm more of a creative who happens to have the skill of audio engineering. So eventually, this led me through playing in bands, being hired as a guitar player, being a vocalist, running people's MIDI setups and running playback for live shows, live concerts, and stuff, to eventually starting to get hired specifically in sound design for film, like independent films and theater in Germany. Like once I moved to Germany during the pandemic, I started to actually get more theatrical jobs, which was nice because all the tours were being canceled.
Is it because
Um,
there's more theater in Germany or because you just wanted to get into a different direction from working with musicians?
as a freelancer, sometimes your phone rings for, guitar jobs for 3 years and then they stop. And then your phone starts ringing for film and you know what I mean? So it was the kind of thing where some of the other things that my phone had been ringing for had slowed down, and then once I started to get my first 1 or 2 theater sound design gigs, people started to hear about me, and then word of mouth, and then I started to get more requests.
So what
So
kind
and
of
I really loved
sound
it. I
yeah.
really loved it.
What kind of
Go ahead.
sounds would you make for theater?
Yeah, it's quite a combination. Sometimes it's actual music because maybe it's dance theater and they actually need custom dance pieces. And other times it's a text piece where they're reading from scripts and they need the occasional musical interlude or transitions. Sometimes it's just wind and water and twinkling stars and birds chattering and leading into a bar lounge. And uh, from a sound design perspective, I got to work directly with the directors. Like I still needed to provide the vibe and the energy that they were looking for. Um, and I'd say the biggest challenge is communicating using entirely different language than I would use with a musician. Like if I'm working with a director who doesn't know super much about music, uh, and they're trying to tell me what they want to support a scene, there's a lot of really interesting and deep conversations that need to be had to translate what they're imagining to what we will hear
Let's talk
later.
about this for a little bit because this is
Hmm.
one challenge that a lot of musicians run into when they start working with people who are not necessarily musicians. Like suddenly they can't tell you I want a violin or I want a G chord and then an F chord, but they're trying in some sort of a way to describe to you a feeling. So, how do you bridge the gaps between people who don't know sound to like translating this into musical cues?
Yes. So one of the first things I do with every new creative group that I'm collaborating with is I ask them to just give me create like a Spotify playlist or something so that I can understand their aesthetic. What is their palette? I like to work with palettes in these contexts because sometimes I just gather together like quick sound effects, sometimes just from a sound library, just to be like, here's a palette of sounds. This would possibly be like low end. I'm thinking sandpaper. Are you thinking sandpaper? Are you thinking chrome?
Hmm.
Is this, yellow or is it like purple? Like I know it sounds abstract in a sort of artsy way, but depending on who I'm talking to, we may discuss like this and then, they might share with me a playlist and I go, oh, interesting. I noticed that 10 out of the 20 songs you sent me has a clarinet in it. You know,
Right.
do you, feel some kind of way about that? And then I start to get a feeling. One of the most challenging jobs that I worked on was I got to work with a music director and a dance choreographer, not a music director, a dance choreographer, artistic director from Brazil, who had an ear for. sort of like really traditional sounds, and also sounds from like West Africa, which am I don't have this ear, I don't have this ingrained in my upbringing. And
All
we're
the
talking about
instruments there.
different, yeah, different instruments, different rhythms, and we found a way to work together. And it was challenging, but we did it, and the help that I had from their references allowed me to deconstruct the music and kind of study it kind of from a scientific music perspective, and then create my version, which still supported the energy that they were coming from. But yeah, it was for sure a collaboration. It was like a piece of me building your baby, your dream. And I take that so seriously. I really take care of the other creatives that I work with, because I'm honoring that what they imagine in their head, but that they can't do. That thing that I always wished I could do for myself, you
Wow.
know.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing. It almost feels like method acting, like you're inserting yourself into a role of someone that you're usually not, but now you need to be that type of a person for this type of a job.
Yeah.
Do you have
Yeah.
any tips for people how to develop this sense of translating someone's vision into notes and music? Like where to even start thinking that way?
Well, yeah, if you're not somehow classically trained, like I'm not classically trained, most of my music theory is more on self-study or individual workshopping. So I had to learn this in order to be able to expand my own palette. But what helps me is like like once I discover like a playlist or a type of music, I try to just listen to it over and over and embody it. So, like in funk music, which I grew up with, it was always about the feel. It was never about counting 1 Iana, 2 Iana. Like
It
this way that sometimes musicians can count rhythms. It was always about like I just have to feel it. Like where does that rhythm land? And so for me, that's my approach. Um, but enhanced with having taken a couple of private lessons here and there to learn deeper theory. uh, I am able to translate a few things. And nowadays with AI, we have a lot more chances to decipher music,
Oh, that's
uh,
true. That's
keys,
true.
and yeah. So this is immensely helpful. And I found that with sound design in general, or music design, like composition, uh, modes is my it's my heavenly tool, is to really continue to deeply study, the basic modes, because the combination of a chord with how you use a scale on top of a chord, depending on where you want to focus your energy, for me has turned out to be everything in how
Wow.
I can create feeling, the different feelings that we need, especially when it's a genre or a cultural music that I'm not familiar with.
Wow, that's incredible. Honestly, I'm gonna check that later. By the way, we have the links for all of your social links and your YouTube channel on the side. If anyone wants to listen to it later, we'll also post it on the Sonic Sphere, so you can all take a listen to some of your material. So okay, you've been doing music with musicians. You've been doing music and sound design for theater. Take us to the next step in your career.
Yeah, XR. So XR and theater started around the same time, and the reason that is because when the pandemic hit and lots of live events were canceled or really slowed down, I wanted to discover or explore a way that I could create a real life experience virtually. And so this led me to testing it out at first, by the recommendation of a friend with a Google
Cardboard.
cardboard.
Yeah, I
Yeah, cardboard, which I still have. It's just like it's dear to my heart. Uh,
think I also
but
have one of them somewhere. Those were
somewhere,
good. Those were really,
yeah,
really good, to be honest.
yeah, seriously. I mean, I was amazed. It got me into it, And so from there, I ended up buying a Quest 1, the first generation Quest. And yeah, I started dabbling in some PC VR because I liked the idea of recording mixed reality with the Live mixed reality app. So I like to see myself in the game. So I was doing
What
stuff
year
like
was
that.
this?
This was 2020.
Okay. Okay. Ah, yeah, when
Yeah.
the pandemic hit.
Yeah. And from there, I said, how cool would it be to make a concert in VR or have events like what we're doing in VR? But I wanted it to be accessible. So I started to mess around with Mozilla Hubs at the time because I created like a convention space slash gallery space, but in in this platform, which is accessible via regular computer. You could go in on your tablet or your cell phone,
Does
but
it
you can
still
also go
exist?
in VR. They just shut down. I was sad about that. But there's a
I
lot of
knew it.
other ones. So like right now, but then there was Altspace, but Altspace also shut
Right.
down. But there's always VR chat. Lots of people are into VR chat. That wasn't my thing specifically, but Microsoft has something called Microsoft Mesh, which can also integrate with Teams, and they're growing that. And then, of course, Meta has Horizon Worlds, which they're really trying to keep going. But Mozilla Hubs was really great because it was just really widely available and very accessible to so many. And through building worlds in that and having events, I ended up teaching myself how to establish a AWS cloud instance so that I could have my own URL that didn't say sky.mozilla hubs. It said like sky hubs or whatever.
Let's
And
just explain to the audience what all of this means. So Mozilla Hub is a place where you can create like a virtual space.
yeah.
Um, and based on that, you can let people into like sort of a virtual world. I actually haven't tried Mozilla Hubs. I tried different ones, but can you just talk a little bit more about what it is you built?
Absolutely. Um, yeah, and then I can share a link with you later.
Please do.
So basically, it was like I wanted to have sort of my own museum with where I could showcase all of my own art. So I created using different 3D models and importing them into the platform, like an actual convention hall. That if you go in VR, um, in 3D space, it looks pretty awesome. I mean, you have columns and, I decorated it. There's chairs and tables and,
And you designed
there's
the space yourself.
yes, yes,
Incredible.
yes. It's through that that I also learned more about Blender because I had to really optimize everything because there's from a memory and a GPU and a CPU, like there's only so much you can put in there, especially if you're going to have virtual guests. So if you wanted to come to my event, you show up, you go through, you log in or whatever, and then you get to pick your own avatar. And then you would come in, and if we're both in VR, we see each other in 3D space and we're having a conversation. It's a social environment, and I can say, "Hey, follow me," and we would hear each other in a spatial sound kind of way. Like if you're standing to my left, I'm gonna hear you from my left, and so on and so forth. And if you're far away, you're gonna sound farther away. So yeah, I set up a space that kind of showcased some of my past art, but some of my current art, and then I even made additional rooms that you could sort of portal to uh, where they would have different themes. Like I had a graffiti room and you can like paint on the walls, but also there's my song playing in the background. And then you can go to another room where it's like a vibey room where you can sort of fly around and get a bird's eye view of the space and just have fun. And another room, I made a 360 video of one of my music videos that I designed in Unity, and so you could actually go in and ride on an automated ride through my entire music video in 3D space.
How
So you
long
could
did
do
it
things
take you
like
to build
that.
all of this?
Um, I guess a few months.
So, from someone with no experience in code, you got to build this entire universe of Sky in VR. Let's
Yeah.
let's dive a little bit into that. So, how did you start? Like, How did you approach such a task? I bet you didn't have all of this in the beginning, or you didn't even imagine that you're going to have all of this, or maybe you did.
You know, I just saw the end vision of what I wanted to have, and the it was for me, it was always about what I want people to feel when they're in whichever point of the journey. And so that was really my focus, and as long as I'm focusing on what I want people to feel or think or experience or consider, uh, the work in between, it's almost a blur. I don't know how much time has passed. I don't even realize that I haven't eaten or something. Like I realize work-life balance is extremely important for our health, but I just sometimes I just really don't realize it. Even in the theater, that's another question I ask. What do you want the audience to feel? So I use the same approach in my stuff. So in the end, if it feels like I hope that people should feel, and I feel that for myself, like even as a DJ, that's how I choose my songs. Um, then I'm on the right path. So if I don't know how to do it, I research and research online until either I find an example somewhere or I just read the documentation and I just try to follow step by step each thing. So at the beginning, I didn't know how to code immediately, but I became aware of coding because there were certain customized things that I wished for that was only possible through code. And so, well, then my only option is to do that. Um,
Great way to discover
yeah.
code. I have to say, instead of just like taking a class, it's like finding a goal and something that you want to achieve, and then finding the tutorials or documentation to just support that type of a goal. I feel like it's a much healthier approach for coding, specifically for artists and musicians.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
and,
yeah,
was the code buggy or dirty sometimes? Yeah, sure, but
probably.
eventually, yeah, of course. Uh, I've made a lot of mistakes. The servers crashed because I didn't understand how to make the servers elastic for depending on how my traffic was at the time. That's okay because I had no idea that cloud engineering was even a job. Like I just wanted my own vanity URL.
That's amazing. So now that you've been through all of this, can you share with us some of the tips or advice from someone who made a lot of mistakes and learned a lot from them and got something incredible
Yeah.
done?
Yeah, I would say basically project-based learning is really, I think, the best for anyone. And so there's a lot of people are especially into that now with like a lot of the boot camps out there. Like fortunately, just recently I went through the XR boot camp
Oh, you did.
approximate. Yeah, I
Those are good
just
friends of
finished
mine.
not too long ago. Yeah. And this was extra because now I have much more of a foundation, but I had like a guided project-based challenge for like 5 months. And so it was during that time that I created XR Audio School. Um,
To it.
and
Yeah.
yeah, so the project-based learning is how I've been always able to accelerate what it is that I do.
Right.
And
So, yeah.
especially with the helping hand of mentors and things like that, then you can really level up. So I think for me, next step would be is like, yes, you can learn some stuff on your own, but I do think having a strong mentor or a strong community that you can really connect with to help keep each other motivated, that's the way. Sort of like what you
Tell
have going on here.
Thank you so much. I'm trying as much as possible to inspire people to do more and to try more things and to just not be scared of failure. Because I feel like as adults, that's the main thing that is stopping us from doing things in life is that we're expected to be professionals from day one. And adults kind of forget that when you start a new thing, you're not going to be good at it. You're going to suck. And that's fine. Just be okay with the feeling of being bad at something in order to be good at it.
Yep.
Sky, take us through some of the challenges that you ran into while building your world in VR.
Yeah. A lot of the challenges were taking on too many new things all at once, and perhaps not understanding how to scope my work, like how to understand how to perhaps estimate and plan the work in a more healthy way. I'm still very happy with what I've done, but this is I think a life lesson for me in any type of work that I do, that I always dream super big. Um, but my dream is larger than perhaps the amount of time I have budgeted for a
Mm.
project. So my mission right now is to slow down actually a little bit. Like I've done the racing. I've picked up a few skills and tools along the way. And now I want to get to I want to have the patience to polish more before launch. And so with this, yeah, this is where I'm like very excited about working with other people, collaborating, working on a team or something like that, because I really have been a freelancer and sort of a solo worker majority of my life. And that has its benefits too, but I think right now the next phase for me is again more community development.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's great. Can you share with us some of the technical difficulties that you ran into?
Yeah. So maybe I could even talk a little bit more about some of the more recent stuff, because like the Mozilla Hub stuff back then, that was like a very specific time some years ago, and now it's like I'm working more precisely with Unity, like as my primary tool,
Nice.
rather than also doing the online sort of web XR stuff. So right now, I would say the challenges that I'm having are transitioning my audio engineer and musician experience, where I know 5 or 6 different software programs and tools, including plugins and everything, and going, okay, but in the Unity and XR uh, uh, landscape, there's an entirely different set of tools. And even though Fmod can resemble your other DAWs, it's still a different type of integration and a different way of working with audio.
That's true. That's true.
So,
That's a very different way.
yeah, yeah. And so my focus right now, even though I know that it would be ideal if I'm looking to go more down the road of audio implementation, is to really dig into these middleware too. Right now, I kind of feel really excited about diving deeper into the code and learning how to hard code audio solutions within games and apps and ideas, because just in my imagination, I feel like it's I will better understand the middleware if I can understand the more, maybe the more difficult or choppy way of doing it. Maybe I'm wrong, but either way, it's a fun journey and it can't hurt. Um, but I
She'll
will
say that.
say, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like middlewares are sometimes giving us some kind of a shortcut to doing like only the audio things and the things that we like doing. And code is a little
Hmm.
bit harder, and musicians usually really hate code. Like I've been to Berkeley College of Music, and everyone's like, code, get it out of my way. I don't want to look at it. But there's nothing to be afraid of. It's totally fine. It's just a little uglier than what we're used to. It doesn't have like a nice fancy UI, but yes, you can code a lot of things yourself.
Yeah. So right now, one of the challenges that I'm having is, I'm also testing out various assets through the Unity store and plugins that can make things easier also. But realizing that they clash a bit with the Unity audio mixer. So like
That's
for
true.
example, in XR Audio School, I was using what is the name of this?
Tunity?
No, mm, that's so funny. I can't, it just slipped my mind right now, but it's called Choreographer Pro. There's
Choreographer.
a
Yeah.
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 So it's really useful for multi-track syncing and things like that.
With a K for anyone who is looking that up. Choreographer
Yes,
with a K.
choreographer. Yeah, but when I was using that to try and program the mixing board in VR, I also wanted to be able to manipulate not only volume levels, but EQs and filters, so that we could
Right.
actually really use the EQ knobs or the pan knobs even. So that meant that I had to try and uh, yeah, manipulate everything using the Unity mixer. And it's just a whole different process. Like the idea of audio routing is the same no matter where you are. However, every interface is different. And when you're now doing things kind of through this like code editor
Right.
combined with it's just less visual, it's less visual. And so yeah, it's sometimes it's a safety net to be able to use plugins that are more visual or like the middleware. But anyway, my point is like I've also met other people who are hard coding all the syncing of the audio stems, and there's tutorials out there. There's ways to do
Right.
it. So I think I just I feel safer as an engineer and as a developer knowing the basis of how it can be done without the fancy stuff, like the pretty stuff.
It does
But it's
make
still
you
it's
into
a
a
huge
better
challenge.
engineer. That's true. So that brings us to the project. Tell us why you were looking at choreographer. Why do you need to do all this audio routing in Unity? Like, I know the answer, but let's share it with everyone.
Yeah, well, the fortunately, I had access to like a free trial of choreographer because it's not something that I would have just
Oh,
purchased
it cost
immediately on
money?
my own. Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, I didn't
It's
know that.
in the Unity asset store, and I think it's like more than $100. Um,
Okay.
but there are many like rhythm game apps that use this type of plugin. Um, Yeah, it's just really cool. They just have like prefabs um, from built for Unity that allow you to, and their own API, where it's just a lot easier to sync things up. Like you can just within 15 minutes, if you have 12 stems from a orchestral piece or something a small ensemble, you can run the violin, the percussion, and everything perfectly in time alongside each other. But at any point, you can mute the percussions, and everything will still stay in sync. Or you can manipulate these things, or you can program them to react to player interactions, um, or you can also it can be done easily by code, but it's nice when you have a helper plugin where you can create really cool visualizers. So imagine you have 12 audio tracks of different sizes, and now you have these different game objects or characters, and you want them to pulse or throb uh, to a particular sound. Then yeah, it's just really nice to have something that helps you save time for that sort of thing. But the first time I made something like in my audio school app that I'm still working on, I have like a talking narration type character who every time they talk, it reacts to the amplitude of the voiceover that's speaking. That I coded on my own
Didn't even notice that.
using yeah, because I don't make it the main focus of the piece because it's more of an educational app. But yeah, this is like sort of your guide or your companion, and it sort of yeah, it moves to
So
the
let,
amplitude.
let's
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get into this app. So the way that I found Sky is through LinkedIn, and I saw a post about like something about like an audio school XR audio something. I'm like, oh, this is exactly what I do, like audio in XR. Oh no. And then I realized that it's not making audio for XR, it's literally studying audio and routing and audio engineering using XR platforms, which was mind blowing for me. So, can you talk to us a little bit about that? The inspiration, what got you to it, and what did you build?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually also teach live engineering at BIM University in Berlin. And so it's been something I've been doing for like the past 6 years or so. So I just thought, wow, how cool could it be to provide an experience like this for everybody who maybe doesn't want to go to university for audio engineering, but that always wished they could be in the shoes of the sound person, you know, at a concert or whatever.
When we say
Or
audio
that
engineering, you mean the person who is on stage, like in the backstage and like monitoring all the sound, right?
Right, right. So a lot of times when we're in the audience, sometimes the front of house engineer, the person mixing the sound for the speakers that's facing the audience, uh, they're sometimes manipulating things on the fly when needed during a show.
Right.
Otherwise, they've set it up during sound check or whatever, trying to eliminate any possible problems during the show.
Right.
So I had this idea that somebody from their own home in a mixed reality environment, or they can have a virtual room if they want. I wanted that to be an on off switch where you could see your actual room, or you could see your room over, like you can clean your room if it's messy by just overlaying it with a virtual uh, overlay. This is to help with accessibility in the sense of focus, like, when we're having all these gadgets and stuff, if we can just clean our room and have a clean white space, then sometimes we
Don't
can
we all
see
want
better.
it?
Yeah. So anyway, that's just again just me trying to think about user experience, but ultimately we start with like a small mixer, something that feels manageable, doesn't have a lot of channels, and just like an XLR cable, and say, okay, these are cables. This is an XLR cable. Interact with it in mixed reality space using hand tracking to learn more about various items. Um, and hopefully, the quiz will show that you learned enough to move on to the next level, and so on and so forth. And if you get through the first bit of lesson and successfully, then we reward you with your first gig into a nightclub, like a dive bar or something like that, where you get to solve a signal routing uh, solution in order to make sure that our somewhat sparse audience can enjoy the show and the show can go on. And you get to eventually use the mixing desk and adjust the levels of a band while they're playing.
Do
And
you have a
I got
fail state where like I don't know, the audience get angry or anxious if the sound is not that good?
This absolutely would be for sure a future feature, but like right now we're still in the prototyping phase, just kind of like a MVP, like it's a nearly finished MVP, something that could be an app store demo or something like that.
When you
So,
say we, how many people worked on it?
oh, okay, yeah. So the I worked with a team of four, including myself, and this was during XR boot camp where uh one of the final stages is like first you do like a few prototypes of your own, and then the whole group kind of gets to vote like who would like to work perhaps to help you develop your prototype into an MVP, a most what is it,
Most
most viable
viable
product.
no, no, it stands for something. A most viable player is what it means in basketball, but MVP
Product,
is
yeah.
minimum viable
Oh,
product.
minimum viable product, yeah. Minimum viable product.
That is
um
a very big difference.
yes, huge,
But
huge,
minimum
huge.
viable product, I'll just explain it to those who don't know. It's if you have an idea for an app or a product or a company that you want to make, the MVP is the smallest unit that you can create that shows the idea. It could be even just like a click of a button and you show a process of like, this is how it would look like. And then you don't add all the fancy things, you don't polish it at all. You just build the most smallest unit that you can that shows your idea working.
Yeah. Yeah. So if this would, I would say what we did was somewhere between an MVP and a vertical slice. Sorry, another definition word, but a vertical slice would be a bit further. There'd be a bit more polish. Um,
Vertical slice is usually fully polished, but it's almost like if you have an entire cake, you don't build the whole cake, you build like one slice that have like all of the flavors of the cake so you can taste it all together and you can imagine how the bigger cake is gonna feel like, sound like, taste like. With like a, I don't know, like if you build a video game, that might be like one level of that video game would be a
yeah.
vertical slice.
And it would have like option menus and like an ending, like a proper ending of some sort, or to show
Yeah, well,
the
an
whole
MVP would
vibe.
be maybe just like one
Yeah.
slide, like one layer of that cake. It's not like
Yeah.
the full bite.
Right. So that's why I say I'm kind of in between because it's not as polished as a full vertical slice, but it's definitely more than MVP.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so we split the tasks. I mostly worked on the overall creative direction as far as like the user flows and um, building the curriculum in a way that, like I have some training in curriculum alignment and things to make sure that it would actually assess people in a way that, did you learn enough to move to the next part of the level type of thing. And yeah, the audio routing. And then I had a colleague helping with the UI design. I had another colleague who was the more senior coder of us all who really took the extra time with reprogramming the modules and like how the flow will work. Because actually, educational apps are pretty intricate when it comes to this. Um, yeah, and then another colleague helping more with the 3D assets and things like this.
Challenge in educational apps as compared to other apps.
Um, I think it's the complexity of how the state machine needs to run. It's
Hmm.
it's it's um it's based on so many things. There's, the narration, but there's also, you know, uh you need flexibility to provide a certain amount of feel. So we had to program in even if we weren't going to use delays, we needed to program in delays uh that that are exposed in the inspector of Unity that at any point without having to go into the hard code, we could say, okay, that voice came in too soon. Let's push it back 1 second or a half a second. We can just do that via inspector. So it was kind of like the challenges here were just communicating as a team to make sure that the learner's experience would be what we need it to be. It's not just about just coding the stuff and making it happen. Oh, this thing should appear here. Yeah, but if it appears too close to you or too far away from you, this can get in the way of learning.
How do you,
Um,
how do you
yeah.
test for things like that?
Hmm. It's first for me. It's about like me literally going in and testing. I mean, of course, we need other testers too,
Right.
but I do have a certain vision. Like it always comes back to how do I want people to feel? I know I'm a techie and I'm doing this and we're poking buttons and making code, but it doesn't matter that you made it appear. It appeared and it startled me.
Right.
That's not going to work, or it's too big. It doesn't feel right. It's too big. It needs to be smaller or larger or whatever, or come in smoother, you know? So, I, it's challenging, because we were an international team. We had one person in Malaysia, we had another person in Kenya, and another person in India, and I'm in Germany. And we're all working through GitHub and time zones but you know what? We did it. And sure, is there more stuff that, can be done to improve it? Absolutely. Is our GitHub repository really hard to follow for anybody else and even us? Yes. But you know what? We got a cool demo out that gives like I think people get the idea.
I feel like it's
And
part of the creative process to like be messy for a little while and be
mhm,
okay with the chaos that is happening just to get something, as you said, just convey a feeling. And conveying a feeling could be so hard. And just keep yourself in check for like what is important and what do I want people to feel like.
mhm.
How do
Yeah.
you stay on that goal? Like, how do you keep remembering, like, what is the core
Well,
message and value that you want to
absolutely.
give?
I I am very much about not only charting things, but from my background working in music and also promoting music festivals and events and parties and just my band or whatever. I'm very into creating things like brand guides. And again, the user flow really helped us. Like for a moment there, I had everything in my head and the guys weren't getting it. And they were like, "We're gonna need a map." So I was storyboarding, like, when they weren't getting the user flow chart, then I literally was like pencil and paper, take a photo, upload it to Discord, and be like, "Does this help?" And yeah, sometimes it was just like that. Um, but I'm just really relentless. Like sometimes people may not always understand why I will ask 10 times for the same thing. If it's not there, uh, I, I then I don't give the thumbs up because I do feel like, especially with VR, right? If somebody gets motion sick on their first try of VR, they're done. It's hard to get them to come back.
True. That's very,
So,
very true.
that I think that's why I was like, at least in the beginning, it's about retention and keeping people and comfort and bells and whistles are, gonna be what helps or results. If it's a learning app, did you learn something? Do you feel accomplished?
That is true. At the end of the day, it is the experience. If you can get people to go through the experience, even if you have the best app in the world, it means nothing if people can't use it.
Yeah. So I just kind of relentlessly hold on to this, and even if people, sometimes get frustrated if they don't fully get what you're going for, but in the end, people get it once they experience it and they go, "Oh yeah, actually, yeah, that does work." But I also
Amazing.
have to pull back sometimes, and I have to say sometimes from a tech perspective, it's important to just get it working at first, just to be like, it's possible, and then we can smooth it out later.
I mean, that would be your MVP, but beyond the
Yeah.
MVP, you're right. Like to get people through this, sometimes I had friends that would like build apps, and then I would try to go through the apps, and they would tell me, "Oh, you're a bad gamer. You don't know how to play." And I'm like, "Are you sure I don't know how to play? Is that like my problem that your game is unplayable?" Like, they're like, "No, because I build it perfectly." I'm like, Okay, then sure." But it's true. Like to keep in check of like, how do we want people to feel? Are they feeling that thing? Am I guiding them through the interaction that I wanted them to go through, or are they completely confused? Is always something to keep in mind of. I'm looking now at the chat and it looks like someone is asking, is the app available somewhere at the moment, or is there a way for people to follow your development and eventually get the app?
Yeah, the best way to keep up to date with me on this sort of thing is probably whatever I'm posting on LinkedIn. I mean, I do have like a portfolio page for it on my website. There is a GitHub repo, but like I said, it does need to be cleaned up, but it's in progress, and it's not yet available. Like I have not put an APK out there to the public. But right now it is
APK
designed
for people is
specifically
a,
for,
yeah.
yeah,
APK
Quest.
is an
It's
Android package. This is a build that you can run on your headset.
right.
Go
So
on.
the goal that I'm having is actually that me and the team, once I come back from sort of my small hiatus, which I'm on kind of right now, um, th- we will polish off a couple of the important bits and try to go ahead and get it up as a demo on the App Store in Quest.
On the Quest App Store.
Yes.
Cool. Amazing. So anyone with a Quest headset will be able to try that. So keep in mind. And we're going to post some of the links later so they can follow you on social media. Sky,
Cool.
any tips for beginners? What to look out for, what to try, approaches for life, anything that you learned?
Um, stay as true to your vision as you can imagine, but keep uh yeah, you still have to keep an open mind because there's so many tools and possibilities out there. So I just say, give yourself little challenges. Like I think one of the most beneficial things that I learned from being part of a boot camp was uh, the sprints. Like set your own sprints. So now for the rest of my life, I'm gonna say, okay, maybe I won't take a project and just indefinitely work on it whenever, morning, noon, and night. But maybe what I will do is I will designate that week or that 5 days or 3 days and treat it like my own hackathon and just say, for this time window, whatever, whether it's 1 day or 3 days or 10, I'm going to focus on this project and give my own self sort of like a calendar date where I'm going to have something done that's presentable. Uh, doing time-based goals like that, and really committing helps you get it done. The worst thing you can have is a whole bunch of unfinished stuff, and then, you guilt yourself about it. So, yeah,
That
that's
is
that's what I
so
would say.
true. For artists, just like have one dedicated deadline. It doesn't even matter what you do for that deadline, but just like set yourself a day that, like, after this, I go to some other task. This is also something that we've been trying to do on the Sonic Sphere to give like weekly challenges for people to just tackle that for this week because there's so much stuff to learn and so many new things that you can get lost in seconds. And I feel like not just with Unity development, but with anything like audio engineering or mixing, mastering, sound design, like any of those challenges, just take one tool and try to learn that for 1 week is going to make you a better artist. So like
Yeah.
take an EQ and play with this for a week. Figure out what it can do. Like try to get it to extreme levels and see what happens.
Yep.
Uh,
Absolutely.
we
So, ooh,
are
yeah, we're at that time.
we're at that time. Sky, can you stay with us for a couple of minutes in case someone have questions?
Yes, yes.
All right. So we don't have a lot of people in the audience, but if anyone wants to ask a question, either on the chat or come live and talk to us, this is the opportunity. And if not, Sky, are you gonna stay on the community and answer question afterwards?
I can definitely answer questions, but it just might be like a half an hour later because I need to be somewhere in a bit, and so I'll be like mobile.
Totally
But
fine.
yes,
I meant in
I'm
the
gonna
next
be
few
here.
days. Yes.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. I'm around. I'm around.
Okay, that's amazing. Are there any questions? I'm seeing some people typing questions, so let's just give them a moment. Thank you so much for your time, Sky. You're awesome, and this journey is just amazing.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Just
Thanks for having me. I'm also inspired by what you're up to. So yeah, really
well,
nice to
thank
connect.
you so much. I'm trying as much as possible to just give information and put it out there. I feel like I don't know, sound design and XR development, and especially in audio design, everything feels like a little Pandora box that you're not allowed to open. God forbid anyone will have that information. So I feel like a lot of people get angry at me for just sharing this for free because they're selling classes for like so much money. Um,
Ah, what
yeah.
has someone contacted you with
No, but
a
I
not
feel
nice
like there
word?
is, I'm not gonna say names, but I'm pretty sure you know some old folks in the industry that wants to keep everything a secret and not share it with anyone.
Yeah,
And they
yeah,
don't like when you simplify things and make it sound like anyone can do that. So
yeah.
there is a question on the chat right now. How do you handle constant change due to tech refinement that is impacting your audio creation and implementation?
Yeah,
That's a good question.
I yeah, I love it. It's a constant topic, even just to consider whether or not to update your operating system.
Oh,
Um, so I think for me, I've been dabbling in various versions of technology since audio technology since 2003. And when I was studying at that time, we were still learning tape machines and how to calibrate yeah, tape machines. But also we were
hey.
learning Pro Tools in
Uh-huh.
the same space. And eventually, all the analog guys uh, found the machines to collect dust because people were more interested in digital. And then, right, some software companies, change even their own way that they do things. And, sometimes you get mad at them and then you move to another one or you find something that you think is better for you. I say, when I chose to get into this line of work, I chose to be a forever student, and I'm okay with that. So, how do I deal with all the updates? Yeah, it's really frustrating, especially with XR because XR is so young right now still. So back when I was doing Mozilla Hubs, and starting with Unity, things were changing all the time, all the packages and things, and as soon as I figured out how to do something, it didn't work anymore.
Not
So that
relevant
that was
anymore. Yeah.
discouraging. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
discouraging at first, but once I got in the routine of understanding that these changes are going to happen and really digging into documentation, understanding how to upgrade if and when I need to, or decide whether that's useful or not for my particular project. Um, Now it's just part of my routine. So I would say my advice for that, if I don't remember if the question asked for advice or if they just asked how I deal with it.
They ask how you handle with constant change, but yes, please
Yeah.
give your advice.
Yeah, my only advice is surrender. That's life.
It's
It's
gorgeous.
life.
I would also say, like, just be bold with your decision because, like,
Yeah.
you're learning Unity and suddenly Godot is getting better, or suddenly, like, some project need Unreal, and you just have to be bold and say, you know what?
Yeah.
I chose this and that's what I'm doing. And why? Because
Yeah.
that's what I chose, not because it's better or worse. Just
Exactly. That's
that's
actually
my
I'm
choice
going
for
through
now.
something like that right now with just really designing my new tech stack, like
Yeah.
from a development standpoint, there's a lot of jobs out there looking for people who can do audio and VR and XR development
Right.
and know C sharp, but they also might want that JavaScript or that you have experience with Python or whatever. So in my case I said, there's a thousand languages out there in different platforms and frameworks. Which ones do I want to choose? Because I can't do them all.
True.
So
That's true.
at least for audio, my choice is I'm already working with C sharp for Unity. Um, I'm going to go ahead and get into C++ because that's going to be useful when I decide to give a bit of energy towards Unreal, but also towards any direct audio programming.
That's true. C++ plus plus
Yeah,
is very, very useful for either audio engineering for like developing plugins or for Unreal Engine. That's very true.
yeah, yeah.
Sky, thank you so, so much for being with us. This was such an inspiring conversation. We're going to be posting this on YouTube later so everyone else can watch this. And yeah, we'll see you around.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks a lot to
Thank you.
everybody.
Have a
All right,
great weekend.
you too.